Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. In today's video, we are going to learn about how we can use Redis in our ASP.NET Core Web API. So whenever you are working on application that's basically send a lot of data or make a request to a certain data, you don't want to always go into your database and make a request. You want to catch some of the data so that anytime that a user make a request within a certain period of time, you won't go to the database, but you always catch it you retrieve the information from the cache. So Redis is one technology that you can use. So by the end of the video, you'll be able to learn how you can then use Redis in ASP.NET Core. So you will know how to set up and how you can retrieve the data and how you can also run Redis in Docker using some command CLI command. So welcome to the video and make sure to watch this video to the end. And if you are new to the channel, please don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel for us and also share this content with others. And if you have a question, you can drop the question in the chat, and also the code will be available for you, so you can check our GitHub repository and then you have access for this code and you can use that one as a reference. So let's get started. To get started, I'm going to use Visual Studio here, and I'm going to say that I want to create a new project. And now I have a template here, so we are going to use ASP.NET Core Web API. So I'm going to select that, and then I'm going to choose where I want to put this one in. So I have a folder here which I can then go ahead and then use that in there. So I can go here and then make sure that I'll select here. And the name of the application, I'm going to make it .NET. So we see that .NET Redis. So Redis Cache. So something like that. API. Let's add API to it, and then let's go ahead and make sure that you are using .NET 9. You can use .NET 8, it will work, but in this video we are using .NET 9, and then we are also use controller based web API. So you can also select that, and then we are going to say that create, and Visual Studio will then create the project for us. So very soon then we have the project created. And you can see this is a default or simple ASP.NET Core Web API. So we have .NET Web API right here, which is kind of easy for us to work on. So what we are going to do is that we are going to structure our web API. We are going to bring in a structure on how we want to do things and how we want to structure things here. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to bring in some packages which it will help us to work with this project. So we are going to hit manage NuGet right here, and then we are going to go to NuGet, and you can see already this is what we have installed. We have the OpenAI and ASP.NET Core OpenAI. This is what we have installed, and then we go ahead and we are going to search for, first of all, we need Scalar, because we are going to use Scalar to make our API calls right here. So we choose that Scalar.asp.NET Core. That is which one that means this is what we are going to use. So we are going to install that, and then we are going to also install another packages. So the second thing that we need to do is that we need to bring in some Redis packages. So we are going to search for Redis right here, and NuGet is going to, when you search for Redis like this, you can see we have the Stack Exchange .Redis, which is one package that we need. We also need the Microsoft extension cache Stack Exchange Redis, right? So we also need that. So we need these two. So the first one we need is that we're going to install this, and then we are going to also install this one. Okay, so now we have all the package installed, so we can go ahead and then trying to start working on our project. So the first thing that we need to do is that we need to make sure we bring in Scalar. So we configure Scalar. So we're going to say that app.map and say that reference. So map, this is Scalar. So we save this. So this is going to help us to basically work with Scalar. And the next thing that we need to do is that we need to go to here. And one thing I want to set is that I want to set this ones to true. So this one should be true, so that when we launch our application, whenever we run our application, it will launch in the browser. But the next thing that I want to do is that I want to bring in launch URL, and then here we want to run everything on Scalar/v1. So this is in Swagger. You may have Swagger/HTML, I mean index.html, but I mean in Scalar we want to do it like that, so it will run on Scalar/v1. So we then copy this one to, if we are also running on HTTP, basically we are going to run on HTTPS, but we can then put it into both of them, and then we can then run our application and check if we can get our weather forecast API showing in the browser, using Scalar. So let's see. Right now we have Scalar right here, and then you can see we can go ahead and make a request. So now we have our weather forecast here. This is Scalar, and then you can see this is our weather forecast. We can then go ahead and make a request. We want to make a request here, and then we are getting a response coming in. So when we make a request like this, you can see we are getting a response coming in. So it means that now Scalar is configured, so we can go ahead and start working with our Redis. So Redis is a nice tool. So what we're going to do is that we are going to create a service, but this time around we are going to use external API to make API calls. So we are going to use HTTP client to make some kind of API calls to fetch external data, which is going to be a lot of data, so that we can work with Redis. So the first thing that I'm going to do is that I'm going to go in and make sure that I have some kind of models, right? So the data that we are going to fetch, I've already have a construct on how it's going to look like, the structure. So I'm going to create a new folder here, and I'm going to give it a name, models. So let's give it this one, models, right? So let's say this is models, right? And then inside the model, let's make sure we are writing the models well, the spellings. So it is going to be models, right? Something like this. And then inside that, we are going to give it a name of, so the website we are going to use is JSON placeholder, which is basically has some kind of product users API that we can then use as samples anytime we are working on making an API call. So we are going to have JSON placeholder DTOs, which we are going to use as a data transfer object for the data that is coming in, so that we can structure what is coming in and how we want to show the response. So we are going to first of all use something we call post. So we need to fetch in a post coming from that API. So we're going to say record, public record, post DTO. So post DTO like this. And then the post normally comes with hints. It's coming with hints of ID. So the post comes with ID, and then it also has a hint of user ID. So we need the user ID too. And then it has a string of we need to have title. So the post that is coming in need to have a title, and then we need to also have another string of body. So the body of that post that we are bringing in. So basically this is post DTO. So that is it. So which means that we are going to fetch post. And the reason why we want to use external API is that we basically want to see how Redis work, so that we fetching the data, the time that it takes to fetch a data, and when we add a cache, the time that it will take, for us to, fetch or retrieve data from the cache. So let's go and see that we also have another called public record right here, and we're also going to bring in comment. So the external API has comment, so we're going to see that comment DTO. And then this DTO, what we are going to put in is that we first also have hint of ID. So we need to have an ID, and then we need to also have a post ID. So you need to have post ID, so something like this. And then you need to have the string name. So right now we need to have name like this, and then we are going to have a string of email, right? So email coming from the comment, and then we are going to have in string of body, so the body of the comment. So basically this is it. So this is also comment. Let's check the spellings well, and then it turns out that the correct spellings here should be comment DTO, right? Okay, good. And then let's terminate this right now. Okay, when we save that, we then have two DTOs coming in. We are going to also fetch in ABOM. So I have all the DTOs here, so let me bring the DTOs. It's kind of simple DTO that I've created, and this is the DTOs. So what we are going to do is that we are going to make an API calls to external API. So we are going to fetch in some kind of data coming in from a certain API, and that API will then give us a lot of data. And one thing that we want to do is that we want to then check the number of, the time that it normally takes for us to fetch that data, and when we add a cache, the number of times or the time that it will take for us to get the data coming in. So that is one thing that we want to do. So now that we have this, we can then go ahead and create some kind of interface. So we're first going to create in placeholder interface, right? That will give us all the data that we need. So to do that, we are going to create in a new folder here called service. So let's add a new folder which is going to be service. So this is going to be service, right? So inside the service, we are going to create in another class. So we are going to bring in another class called JSON placeholder service, which is then going to be an interface. Make sure that it's interface. So this is going to be some kind of interface, and what is going to happen is that it's going to bring in all these things, which is normal interface that we create in ASP.NET Core. So it's going to bring in all this. First of all, it's giving us all posts, it's giving us all comments, all albums, all photos, all to-dos, and all users. And this service, what is happening is that we are going to use HTTP client to make an API calls to fetch this data from external API, which is the JSON placeholder, which give us some fake data for us to use anytime that we want to interact with external API. So we have this right now. So the next thing that we want to do is that we are going to create in some kind of JSON placeholder service. So we are going to create this one right now. First of all, we want to go ahead and create a service, interact with the external API, and check the number and how the API calls and everything works. And later on, we bring in Redis and see how that one to also work. So let's go ahead and create a service right now. So we are going to create a service right here, and what we are going to do is that is going to bring in JSON placeholder. So it's going to bring in this, and then we are going to implement this interface. So when we implement this interface, you see we have all the method right here. And one thing that we want to do is that we want to bring in HTTP client, because that is what we are going to use to make the API calls. So we have HTTP client right coming in, and it say read only, and it say that HTTP, right? HTTP. Let's go and see that HTTP. So HTTP client coming in, and then we already have it here. But there is one thing that we also need to do. We need to also bring in some kind of base URL, right? So what we are going to do is that the base URL that contains the API, I mean, where the API located, right? So it's we're going to say private const, right? And then we say that is the URL is string, right? And then say that base URL, so which I'm going to bring the base URL here, and it's a fake stuff, right? So you can use it anytime that you want to make API calls. So we go ahead and see that this is the base URL that we have right here. Let's close this and let's terminate this. So this is basically the base URL, and then we are going to create a constructor for this. So we probably want to generate a constructor for this one. So we generate a constructor for all of these things, right? So let's generate a constructor. Let's check, and I generate a constructor. So let me generate my own constructor. So the IntelliSense is not giving us. So we are going to say that public right here, and then we have this service. So we are generating a constructor for this. So we go ahead and then generate this, and then we have our HTTP clients coming in, and then we do it like this. We have HTTP client, and then we have HTTP client. So we have HTTP client like this base, and then it then fetch the base URL, right? So the HTTP client is already making the API calls to the base URL so that we can go ahead and use it. So the first thing that we want to do is that we want to then bring get all post at the first bottom here right now. So we want to get all post, and then all post from this base URL, right? So we want to make an API call to external API and check the number of, the time that it normally is going to take us to fetch the data coming in, and when we have Redis added, how the time that is going to take us to do that. So the first thing is that we have this one that give us all the post, right? And then we are going to make it async. So we are going to make this one async. Okay, so this is an async method right here, and you see that return await. So we await, we have our HTTP client coming in, and then what it does is that we are going to say get from JSON get from JSON sync, right? Get from JSON sync. So this is it, and then what's happened is that we then go and see that this is kind of a list, right? Because we need to have a list of posts. So we're going to see that a list, and then we probably going to have, we just want to use the post DTO. So let's use this instead. Okay, and then in here, what we want to do is that we want to go ahead and then use the post DTO, right? So post DTO right here, and what's happened is that it's going to have this, and then it's going to have this. So inside this, what we do is that we're going to say /post. So let's check the what we have this async, right? And then HTTP get from JSON, right? So get from JSON HTTP client, and then we see that list post. So let's use this coming in, and let's make sure to terminate this right here. So the error we are getting is that list does not exist. So let's see how we have spelled the list, right? Okay, so let's check why So let's check the list. Make sure to delete this, right? Okay. So let's delete this instead. And now we have this making an API calls to the external API, right? So this will give us all the posts, and then we are going to do the same for the rest. So get or comment is the same one that we are going to do. So what we are going to do is that we are then going to say that we want to go return await the HTTP client comes in, right? And then what happened is that it also, so we can then copy this and then paste this one here, right? So we paste this one here. What we are going to do is that instead of this, we are going to see that comment DTO, right? So we already have comment DTO coming in, and then with this is async, right? And then we have to make sure that this is an album. Okay, let's, instead of comment, we are doing album, right? Okay. So let's go ahead and bring this one here. So after post, we move to comment, right? So let's try to make sure that we're already using the namespace. So we then copy this one. It's the same thing. So we copy this one and then we will bring it here. So we bring that one in here, and then inside of post, we are then going to see comment DTO. So comment DTO, and then the comment DTO is coming, and this is supposed to be async. And then in here, what we do is that we see that slash comment, because that is the endpoint coming in. So slash comment, we copy that, we go here. We have to make sure that this is also async, so in the same format. And when we are using the Redis, you will see how we are doing it. So after this, we are going to create a controller and see how everything is coming from. So you see that we can see that album DTO, which is coming in right here. And then what we are going to see that this is going to also slash albums, right? So slash albums. So let's spell it well. See that albums. So something like this. So we are not doing it all. Let's make sure that later on we come and then complete everything. So now we have 3 services, or we have 3. We are making API calls to 3 services right here. We are going to get a post, we are get comment, we get albums. So the next thing that we need to do is that we need to make sure that we register all the services here. So we are not going to do much, just to register the service. So we can then come here, and then we are going to say that builder dot what we are doing is that service right here, and then we are going to say add transit, right? So something like that. And then what we are going to do is that we are going to the IJSON placeholder, which is this, and then we have the services coming in. So we have already registered that services in. So we need to go and then create a controller. So the controller then will make some kind of API calls right now. So let's go and create a controller, create another class like that, and say JSON placeholder controller. So this is basically, we make this one a controller base. And what we are doing right now is that we want to make API calls to some kind of external API, and then we check that one and see how long it will take us to get a data in return. And then when we add Redis Cache, how long is going to take us to retrieve a data from the cache or setting a data to the cache. And this will help us to understand how it works and why we should use it in our application. So that is very good. So the next thing that we need to do is that here is controller. So we're going to say that this is basically API controller. So something like this. And then the route, we probably going to see that we need to have a route here. And then the routes, we want to do APIs we can do that. We are not doing any version here, so we just do this. And what we are going to do is that we are going to bring in that service. So private read rule IJSON placeholder service, right, coming in, and then we do it is like this. And what we do is that we go ahead and then trying to generate a constructor for this. So now we have a constructor. So the first thing is that we are going to make an API calls and say that we want to get all posts. So here we then see that post, right? So we have a post that we want to get. And then what we are going to do is that we're going to say public async. So we have async task right here. And then we see that I action. So we need I action coming in. So I action, we need I action right here. So I action resource, this is what we need. So we have and say that get, let's make this one get all post. Okay, something like this, and then this is it. And then get all post, what we are going to do is that we are then going to say var post, because we want to go in there and get all post, and then say that return okay. So this is basically going to give us all the posts, making an API calls to the external API, and then it's going to give us some kind of all posts coming in. So let's try it and run this code right now and see if this is working, if this can give us some post in return. So let's go here, let's refresh our Scalar. It turns out that there is an error coming in. So what we need to do is that we need to close this. Let's run the application again, and let's check the reason why it's not working. Okay, HTTP, the server is no longer running. Why are we getting that error? So now we are getting an error, the application is not running. So let's try to debug and see that we have not added HTTP client, right? We have not registered that. So we need to tell ASP.NET Core that this application that we are running, we have not added HTTP client service right here. So add service, builder add service, and then we are going to say that add HTTP client, right? So HTTP client, so add HTTP client coming in right here. We save that. Now let's try to run the application, so that because we are using HTTP client and we have to make sure that we are using it. So this is basically HTTP client. We making requests to external API right here. So what we need to do is that we have the get, which is going to give us all posts coming in. Let's make a request, and then you can see there is an error coming in that the response status does not indicate. So the HTTP client is making there is an error coming in. So let's check why there is an error coming in. So one thing is that let's check the reason why it's doing that, and let's check the endpoints very well. So this is supposed to be post, right? It's not just post. So let's rerun the application and go and make a new request. Let's refresh this right now and then make a request. And then you can see that Ethic has, so this is the most important thing that we need to check right now. So if you check right here, you can see that Ethic has 594 milliseconds for us to get all these posts coming in, because we do not have Redis Cache right now happening right now. We are just doing normal stuff. So let's go and do the rest, and let's check this one. So let's go to the controller. Let's go to the controller right here and make sure to also do the rest. So here we can do HTTP. We want to get all comments coming in. So we want to do all comments coming in. So we have already done with post. So the same thing that we are going to do is that we are going to then go in here and then see that comment, right? So HTTP, we can copy this one, and then let's do this, but let's go ahead and do this as comment. So this is going to be comments, right? Okay, so inside the comment, we are going to do public async because we want to get all comments from that fake placeholder coming in. So we want to also go ahead and do action. So action results coming in, and then here we see that get all comment. Let's go say all get all comment. So get all comment. Let's make this one big. Get all comment, and then it's kind of this. What happens here is that we need to do the same thing. So we say var, and then we come in and see that comment, right? So the comments now is called to this. We get our comment and return okay right here. So when we make an API call, this thing too needs to give us all comments coming in. So that is it. That is one thing. So let's check the number of milliseconds that is also thick for us to get comments coming in. So right now you can see we have comment 2. Let's check if the API, everything is right. This thing is also making this is also taking us 953 milliseconds. So we can see that if we are making an API call to this external API, for us to get the certain data, it takes a certain bit of time, or it takes time before we get this. And this is where Redis coming in, right? We need to do some cache for us to get the data coming in. So that anytime we want to make a second request, so we make a first request like this, we catch in the data, and we want to make second request, we then retrieve that one from the cache. So that is the goal here. So now you have seen that when you want to make an API call, it takes some kind of thumb, right? It takes longer before the data comes in, and it takes 953 milliseconds, which is a lot. We need around maybe 11 milliseconds or something, because now we are making an API call to direct service. So let's go and start implementing the magic, right? So first thing that I'm going to do is that we are going to create in a service. We are going to create an interface right here. This interface is going to call Redis service, right? Redis service, Redis, right? Service, Redis service. So we are doing it like this, and this is supposed to be an interface. So we're going to say that this is supposed to be an interface, and what we want to set in is very simple. We are going to have 2 methods right here, only 2. So if you are working on a certain application, you might add a lot of maybe some kind of interface method or something, some functionalities. But in here, we want to just set and retrieve. So the data that is coming in from the API, the response that we are getting, we want to set that one into the cache, and we want to also retrieve that. So to do that, we do this. So this is the method that we need. We need only to get data sync and then set data sync, and we are making this simple because we have a certain time that we want to set everything. We want it to expire, right? So we don't just set the data and we leave it there. We can set maybe some minutes, maybe 5 minutes. We then if the user make a request within the scope of 5 minutes, retrieve everything from the cache. But if it take long, go back to the database or go back to where the data is and bring it back. That is the goal here right now. So we have this. So we are going to create the Redis service, right? So let's go to the service right here. We see that we want to add another class. So the class we want to add is that we are going to say that we have Redis, right? Redis service, and then we do something like this, and this is going to implement Redis interface, right? Redis interface. So this is it, and then we are going to implement that interface. So now we have this interface coming in just like that. So one thing that we need to do is that we have this interface, which is the Redis service, and then we are going to use this with our JSON placeholder service so that we can catch the data coming in there, right? So that is one thing that we need to do. So to do that, what I'm going to do is that we have the first one, but before we can go ahead and do that, let's go in here and try to bring in something. So the Redis has something we call database, iDatabase. So basically, as I said, it's in-memory database. So it helps you to hold the data in the memory for a period of time before it will leave based on the expiring date that you set. So that is basically it. So we're going to bring that interface. So we're going to say iDatabase, right? And then it's going to come from the package that we install. So iDatabase, and you can see it's coming from this right here. And then we're going to set into, we can see that database. So this is it. And then we need to make sure that this is also in a constructor. But this time around, see how we are doing the constructor. We are going to do it like this. See, Redis, right? Service. So this is Redis service, and then we do it like this. And then we are not going to pass in the database straightly. We are going to do it like this. And in here, this is one thing, because when you are running Redis, right, it's either you are running in Docker or you have a service that is running it for you. But in our case, we want to run it in localhost. So the one thing that we need to do is that we need to also, indicate where we are running our Redis, right? So very easy. So we are going to say var. We are going to tell ASP.NET Core that, okay, we are running this Redis in our localhost. So we have something called connect to multiple, right? So let's do this. Connect here. Okay, let's see. Connect. Connection. Okay, so let's do it. Connection. Connection. Multiple. So let's have this connection multiple Scalar. This is what we need, and then it has something that we can say connect. Oh no, it's not connection. So this is not what we want. We want this it show connect, and then we see that multiple. Okay, so this is what we want, and this has something we call connect. And then inside the connect, what we want to say is that we want to say that this is our app, or the Redis is going to run on localhost dot 6379. So this is basically where we probably want to run everything. We run it on localhost. So let's say localhost. So this is where we basically run it, right? So we run it on localhost 6379. So basically this is it, and let's go and then add this one too. So we say that we then see that the database is now getting to this. So where this connection will be where in our local machine where the Redis is working, and we connect the database to it so that they can communicate, right? Okay, so when they communicate right here, for us to set the data into the Redis cache is very easy. We see the value, right? Because we basically want to do some kind of value here, and I say that await, right? And then what we are going to do is that we then go into the database, right? Because that is what we want to set everything to. And say that string, right? Let's make it a string value, right? Value get. So this is basically get data sync, right? The first one is that we want to get the data sync instead. So we're going to say that get value a string here, and then we are saying that get string gets. Okay, let's make sure we are doing the right thing. String like this. Okay, so string get, this is what we want, and then we pass in the key, right? So the key is basically, we are going to work with the key, and you see that we indicate a certain key, how we want to identify certain data, right? Okay, so when we get the key right here, what we want to do is that we have the key, return the data, right? Here it's a no, right? And we have to make sure it's no, and then we say that default, right? So default, and then we see that JSON serializer, we want to serialize this thing coming in, right? So JSON serialize, so we want to serialize this coming in, and then so this then would then deserialize, right? We want to deserialize this, the data that is coming in. So we see that .t, and this is very simple in the value that it comes with, right? So that is basically it right here. Boom. So basically we want to set, we want to get the data from the cache. This is what we are doing. We first have to connect to the Redis cache, and then we set in the data, and then the data, when we are putting in there, it comes with JSON. So we have to make sure we are using some kind of a certain JSON to deserialize it, right? Because when we are putting it there, we serialize it, and then when we are getting it back, we have to make sure we are trying to deserialize this thing. So that is one thing that we need to do. So now we are done with a method that can help us to get the data from the cache. So let's go ahead and also implement in a situation where we want to set the data into the cache, right? So what we do is that we go ahead and then we see that var, we can say JSON. Let's make it like this, JSON like that. And then we, first of all, when we are getting the data, when we are setting the data, we, as I said, we want to serialize it, and when we are getting back, we deserialize it. So because we want everything to be like a JSON stuff, right? Okay, so what we're going to do is that we're then going to bring in the JSON. So this is what we do. We then have the JSON serializer, and then we serialize the value that is coming in. When we get this, we say that return. So return await, we go into the database. What we do is that we set the key, and then we set in the JSON, and then we have the expiring time coming in, and then we then make sure that we subtract the expiring time from the current time, right? So that we be able to see that whether everything is being expired or something like that, right? So that is it. So this is the service that we need for the cache. So let's go ahead and then trying to also work with the the JSON placeholder right here. So the JSON placeholder service, we are not going to do it like this anymore. So what we are going to do is that we are going to make sure that all the services are there, but we are going to improve it, right, in a different version. So this is a controller, okay, this is JSON right here. So the first thing that we need to do is that we have our HTTP client here, we have the base URL. Now the second thing that we might bring is now we have the Redis service in, so we need to bring in that one. So we say private read only. So private read only I Redis service, and then we bring that one in. And basically we also want to bring in iLogger, because we want to log in some information to check if everything is being log as we want. So we see that iLogger coming in, and in here is going to take in like this. Then we have the base URL, and the one thing that we're also going to do is that we are going to have private const, and this one we are using a best practice, so we want this code to be very concise. And then we have the default we need to have some kind of hour or something like that, right, coming in. So we don't want to put everything in the cache for long. We need to set some time or something. So I can see that the default cache, let's give it a proper name, right? The default cache, let's do it like let's see, the default cache minute or something like that, and then we can then set a minute right here. So let's then now go ahead and improve this. So our constructor, within our constructor, we then have HTTP client. Now we are going to have this coming into. So let's make sure that we first have HTTP client. The second one that we need to have is we have the service, Redis service. The second one that we need to have is our logger, right? So when we get them, we need to bring them here, right? So now in here too, we then have this inject to the service, right? Because it's constructor, and then we have the HTTP client coming in. Now we want to make sure that we improve the HTTP client and make sure that if a certain error comes in, we want to throw that error coming in. So we throw new some kind of argument, right? We throw new kind of argument no exception, right? Something like that. And you see name of this. So basically that is it. And then we have our Redis service coming in. So we also have our Redis service, which is then is going to be the Redis service here, and then also going to have the C kind of exception. So we can copy this right here, then we paste it in here, and then instead of this, we see that this is going to be name of the Redis service, right? So let's go back right here. You see that this is going to be the name of the Redis service here. So we don't want this, we want to do some kind of this. So if there is some kind of error, it's going to then try to catch it for us. So let's go and then also do the same to the logger right here. So then that one too is called to the logger, right, coming in, and then it also has the same thing. So we can then paste that one to here, and then we see that this is it like that. And then in here, let's go ahead and see that, okay, the logger, right? Okay, good. So now we have then bring in, we have all the services injected right here, and now we can go ahead and do the magic, right? So this is our Redis service, and it's saying that it's unused. We are going to use it, don't worry. Okay, so what we are going to do is that we are going to make this code very concise and best practice. That is what we are using here. And because when we are using this with your production code and everything, you will know that you are following best practice. So instead of us to make the code dry, we are not going to repeat ourselves, because if you are to do this, we are doing it for all of the services, and this is not a best practice. So we are going to create a general method like get cache data sync, which is then going to work with everything. So we are creating some kind of generic method that we can use with other method that we have right here. So I'm going to go in here right now, and then what we am going to do is that I'm going to say private, right? And then we see private async. So private async, right? And then we see task, and then we are going to say that this is going to be enumerable, right? So enumerable right here coming in, and then what happened is that this one taking t, because we are, as I said, we are making it generic as possible. So we're going to say get cache. So get cache, get cache. So get cache. Let's see, get cache. Like, cache data. So the name is good. sync. Let's add sync to it, so we know that we are performing asynchronous. So let's see that this is going to be T, right? And then what is going to take is that this method right here is going to take in first of all, it's taking endpoint. So the endpoint right here is string, right? So it's going to take in a string of endpoint. Let's make sure we are trying in a string there. Oh god, string here, and then it's going to take in endpoint. So it's taking in endpoint, and then it's taking another string right here, and it's going to take in the cache key. So we have the cache key too, and then it's going to take in entity name, right? So we have, and I'm going to show you why we are creating this, because we don't want to repeat ourselves. So we have one method that can perform a lot of things for us. Okay, and this is async, so don't worry, we are going to perform a lot of stuff with it. Okay, good. So now we are here, and we are going to put this to a try catch block right here. So try, and then this is going to be catch, right? And then inside the catch, we might need exception. So when a certain exception happens, so here we have a exception, and then we're going to put exception to this, and then that is it. So let's see exception. Okay, so when exception happens, we will know what to do. So the first thing that in the try, what we are going to do is that we are going to say var catch. So let's have a better name coming in. Say catch. So catch data, right? So first of all is that we want to catch data. So we see that await right here, and it's go to the Redis service, and then what is that get data sync, right? And then it's going to take in enumerable, and then it's going to take the key. So because we are going to give every data that is coming in a certain key, so we are trying to put this, or we are trying to identify some data based on the key. So let's go and say that this is enumerable right here coming in, and then it's taking in some key. So we see it taking in T. So when it taking T, in the end we have the catch key. So this is the catch key coming in, and then we terminate this right here. So we have this. Then we say that if the catch data is null, what happens is that we log in information. So we want to log in information right here. So log ilogger, right? And you see that log information. So we log information, and then the information that we want to log, because when we are catching the data, the only thing that we can use to identify whether everything is working is our logs, right? We check the logs, everything working, and the time that you normally auto take. That is why initially we decided to build an API small and make the API, because, and you see that we're having some kind of a lot of time, right? So when we check, you can see we are having 953 milliseconds to get the data coming in, which is not the best practice, and this is not how we should be making our API. It needs to be very fast. So we can keep this one in mind, that initially we were getting 953 milliseconds before the data will come into our the response will come. So we log in information right here, and then we have this. We bring in our $sign here, and then what we're going to do is that we bring in the entity name. So entity name, entity. Okay, let's have entity name right here, and then what we are going to do is that the entity name is retrieved, right? What we are saying is that retrieve, right? So when the data that we are trying to get, we are want to catch, it's not null, right? It means that the data is being catched. See, retrieve from the cache. retrieve from the cache. So we are going to say that when the data is retrieved, so let's spell it retrieval. Okay, and then let's try to terminate right here. So we log information to know that okay, everything is being cached, and then we then return cache data. So let's add D here to make it something like, you know, the data that we have been cached, and then let's add data here. So if the data is not known, what we want you to do is that return it, right? But if we are not finding any data, we then go ahead and make a request. So this is basically, if we first check if the data is in a cache, we then retrieve it. If it is not in the cache, we then going to make sure that we make our normal API request. So var data. So we're going to see that var data is called to await. So await, we have our HTTP client. So now we can use our HTTP client right here. And then what we are going to do is that we say get data from async, which is what we have been doing for the other ones, right? And then we are seeing that this is also numerable right here. So basically is very easy. What we are saying is that first of all, this custom method that we are creating, we are going to use it for the other methods so that we can use it to make our API calls. But what we are trying to say is that very simple. First of all, we check the cache. If the data is being cached, we get the data from it, right? If it is not in the cache, we make our normal API call to the endpoint, right? So to the endpoint. So here we're going to see that this is going to be T, right? So we make the normal API calls. Here we probably want to see that T, right? And then we close it like that, and then we're going to have this. And what we are saying is that endpoint. So the endpoint, we make the API calls to the endpoint so that we get it. And if the endpoint 2 is not, okay, let's check this one. What we are doing, it is called to instead of it's not, is called to. So this one, okay. So if it is not, is called to, no, what happened is that it means that when we get the data, the request that we are making to the API calls, or let's check this one as well, not is called to. So when we make the API calls, what happens is that when we get certain data, right, and then we then want to catch that data, right? So that data that is coming in. So we see that, and then we have our Redis services coming in, and then now we call in set the data sync, because that one set the data. And then what we are going to do is that here, first of all, we want to have the key. So we need to have the cache key first. Second is the data, right? We need to have the data. And then the third one is that data. We need to have data, time. So the datetime dot, let's use the UTC 1, right? And then we probably want to add a minute. We want to add a minute because we want the cache, we want to catch it for a certain minute, right? And what's happening is that the minute is then going to take our default minute. So this is basically what we want to do. So the minute is going to take in our default minutes coming in. So this method that we are trying to do here, we are taking our time to get to understand this, because what we are saying is that now get data sync is going to take in data, certain data, and data side that is going to, it's taking an endpoint, it's taking the cache key, and it's taking the entity name. So we first check if the data that we want to get is being cached. If it is that, then we're going to retrieve that. If not, we then make our normal API calls to the endpoint, and then we also make sure to catch that. So when we catch that, we then also want to do some log, and then so that we will know that we have cached the data. So log information and then cache data. We can then see that, but we can go and see that the entity name is being cached, right? We can use the entity name. So here we can probably make it better, right? And then we are going to see that entity name right here, and then we say that cache successful. So let's close this here so that we can see that cache successful. So we have cached it. So whenever we see that we have cached everything successful. So let's do this, right? Cache successful. So that is it. And then when it happens like that, we return the data. When you catch it later on, then we return the data. If not, right, if none of this thing happens, we then fetch, then it means that there is an error coming from our database, our API course or something like that. Log warning. So we want to log a warning, and then what we are going to do is that we have this, and then we have our $sign here, and then what we are going to see is that no data, right? No data. So we see that the entity name right here, and then we are going to see that no data received. So it means that there is an error with our API, right? So no data received from API. This is the log that we probably log, and then when it happens like that, we then return empty, some kind of empty object, right? IEnumerable right here, and then you see that we return something empty. And then when there is an error coming in, what we do is that here we want to log the error. So you say log error, and then what's happening is that we first want to log the error, and later on we want to have our $sign coming in, and then we want to also see that error retrieved, right? Retrieving. So when we are trying to retrieve this thing, maybe error occur. So error, and then we have the entity name, because we want to know which entity that thing is working with. And then we're going to say that, and then in here we're going to have the message. So basically this is it. And then we see that true, right? Because we want to throw this kind of error. So basically this is what is going to do the work for us. We have, first of all, one method right here. What it's doing is that first of all, it will check if the data we want to fetch is being cached. If it catch, it will retrieve it. If it's not, it will then make an API call, and then it set the data into the cache also for us. So now we can go ahead and use it. So now instead of this, right, instead of we doing this, repeating ourselves, we can then call this method, right? So the get cache data sync, which is this, right? And then what's happened is that we then pass in post DTO in, right, as a data, because when you check here, we are passing in some kind of T. So this is the DTO that we are passing, and now we need endpoint key and then the entity name, right? So we have this, and then the next thing that we need to do is that we need to make sure that this thing is kind of we are doing it like this, right? So that we then take advantage of this new .NET 9. So that is one thing we want to do. So we want to make it very concise, right? And then in .NET you can do it like that, right, without even trying to write a lot of code. So just like that, and then we are free to go. So we have this, and then the next thing that we need to do is that we can say that everything is no, right? But we are going to provide in something inside. So the first one that we need to do is the endpoint. When you check, let's delete everything here so that we can then do it like this. So this one that we created, which is going to do the work, we need the endpoint, we need a cache key, and then we need the entity name, right? So in here, the first thing that we need to do is that we have to slash post, right? Which is going to be the endpoint right here. And then inside this, we go ahead, we also do the key. So the key here is going to be post, or this is the key we want to assign to the cache. So we identify this cache with this key. And then the last one we want to do is we want to have what we call post, right? So this is basically it. And then let's see how it goes. So we have public task. We don't need it. We are not making any async call. So we remove the async because this will do the async call for us, right? Okay, so this is basically it. And you can see this is very concise. This is the best practice. This will make your code easy to read and understand. So now we can then copy this and then use it for the rest. And then, you know, it will be easy for us. So we can copy this. We can then make sure we do the same for the rest. And then in here, we probably want to do this. Let's use some expression here. And then let's copy this. Let's delete this. And then in here, let's paste this one here. So this is a public async task. And then we are getting an error coming in. What we need to do is that here we need a comment DTO. So let's go first and say that comment DTO coming in like this. And then what we need here is that the endpoint for us here is comment. So we need endpoint of comment. And then in here, we're going to say that the key we want to give to this is also going to be comment, or, and then the entity name we want to give here is comment. So basically this is it. This is also going to make an API calls to comment. And you see, this is very nice and the code is very easy to read. It's following all the best practice, right? So this method that we created here is doing the whole, all the work for us. We don't need to repeat ourselves. So the next thing that we want to do is also trying to do get or abom. So we have to make sure that this is now not async. And then we're going to bring our expression right here. So when we have our expression, we paste in this, and then this is also going to be abom DTO. So we say the abom DTO coming in, and then the endpoints for us right here is going to be some kind of aboms, right? So abom, and then the key we want to assign to this, so that if we want to identify this cache, we then use the key. So we say the aboms, or, and then the entity name here, we want to give it the name of aboms, right? So something like this too. And then let's go ahead and delete this. And then we have to make sure that we delete this one too. And then we bring in our expression right here, right? And then we do something like this. So then this is going to be photo DTO coming in. Okay, so this is also endpoint that is going to give us photos from that JSON expression, fake that API that will come, which is the JSON placeholder where we get that APIs coming in. So we're going to see that photos, right? And then here, instead of post, we're going to see that photo, or, and then we are making the keys very easy. The keys is something you can also set your key. It's not always you have to do it like this. So I'm going to do photo. So photos, right? That is the entity name. And we are going to do the same for to do. So inside to do, we also say something like this. Then we paste in. Let's copy one of this method right here, and let's try to paste in here. So let's go back. Now this is going to be to do DTO. So this is the DTO that we created an initial one. So we're going to say that to do DTO, and the endpoint for us to get to do is going to be to do's. So this is it, to do's, and then we can say that the key we want to assign to this is going to be to do, or, and then the entity name right here is to do's. So let's do to do's right here. So this is also going to fetch all the to do's coming from the API. And the last thing that we want to do is also getting some kind of user. So when you check that API, you have a lot of, services that you can use. You can make API calls to a lot of things in there, but I think this is good. We can use this to check how our cache is also working. So then we can go in there and see something like this. Then we paste in this one, and then in here we're going to see that user DTO, and then in here we see that users. So this is going to be users, and in here we can see that users or, and then the entity name here is going to be users. So basically this is the service. Now we have this service which is very concise, using best practice. And if you are working around cache, if you are working with Redis, this is how you should do it. And this make your code very concise, sort of you repeating yourself anytime. So the next thing that we want to do is going in there and complete our controller. So we already have some comments. We have already implemented comments. So the next thing we want to do is we go in there and bring in our bombs. So it's the next thing we want to do is we want to get our bombs, right? So we copy this, and then we just, it's the same thing, but we're just changing the routes here. We're going to see that this is going to be our bombs. So when we make an API calls, this is also going to fetch in some kind of albums for us. And let's make it like that. Oh, we don't need to do this. What we need to do right here is public async, and then we probably need to bring in a task action results. And then what we're going to happen is that we're going to see that get all albums, right? So get all albums, something like this coming in, and then we do it like this. You have to make sure now is this. So here we're going to say var albums. So we go in and have albums, and then we make an API call. We then go to the service to make an API call, and then we return albums coming in. So this will give us all the albums right here. We need photo to do, and then user. So we're going to have HTTP right here, and then we're going to say that this is going to be photos. So photos like that. So this will be the name for the endpoint, right? So photos. So we have this as photos, and say public async, and then we can copy this because async task action results is what we need, and then we paste this one right here. And what we're going to do is that we're going to say that get all photos, right? So get all photos is what we bring in here, and then we do something like this. So we say var photos, because photos, that is what we want, and then we say that it's called. We go to the service that will make an API call right here. So this also give us all photos. So you can still check this, that initially when we were doing it without cache, we were getting this, that this was 953 milliseconds for us to get the data from this API. So if it's our normal application, it could be that we fetching the data from the database, we making an endpoint, because when we go production, the database or the server is going to be sitting somewhere like this, and the front end is going to make a request to it, or we are going to make a request to it. So if we want to catch all these things, then this is how we do it, right? So now let's go and complete we need to have to-dos and users, right? So we are going to do to-dos, and that is why in the service, you can check in the service here, we have added some logs to check if everything is retrieved, everything is coming from the cache, if we have catching something, and I'm going to show you in the log. So when we run this application, we are going to bring in our terminal and check when we make a request and see if everything is coming in. So let's go to the controller, and now the next thing that we want to do is to-dos. So let's paste in right here and change this to-dos. So this is going to be to-dos, and then let's add the S right here and say that this is to-dos, and say that public async. So public async, and then we need task action resource. This is what we need, and say that get all to-dos, right? So get all to-dos, this one thing that we need, and then we say something like this, and then we're going to say that in here we say var to-dos, right? So var to-dos is going to await, and then we go into the service, and then we bring in the to-dos. So this is also one thing. Now elevate only the users, right? So in a service, we only have an method that will make API calls to get all users coming from that endpoint. So we see that users. So we get all the users like that, and then you see that public async. So public async, and we also need task action resource like this. So we are going to use that, and then we are going to say get all users, right? So get all users, something like this, and then in here we are going to do that, and we are saying var users. So let's say var users, and it's called to await here, and then we go into the service. So JSON, and then in the service, what we do is that we get all users. So get all users coming in, and then when everything do, we return okay. So basically this is it, and this will make an API calls, and we have already configured our cache using best practice here, and everything should work as we expected, right? So our cache should take 60 minutes before it will go up. We can then make it 5 minutes or 2 minutes, something like that. It depends on how you want to do it, right? So within some kind of 5 minutes, it's supposed to go away. It will clear, right? So that you have to make an API call. So when a user make a request in the scope of 5 minutes, the first request will fetch the data coming in, and then it will catch, everything will be catched, and then the next request that will make, it will then retrieve the data from the cache instead of going to the database or making an API calls, which is not going to cost you a lot of money, right? So that is one thing. So let's go ahead and run application if there is no error, but there's going to be an error because we have not registered this service in the program.cs. So let's go to the program.cs and make sure that we have the cache service already registered, right? So this time around, when we have the HTTP clients right like this, we can do this. So we can say builder, and then we're going to say that service, right? And say add transit, right? So we're going to say add transit like that, and then we say that Redis, right? Redis service like this. We have registered the service right here. So that is one thing. So we have our JSON placeholder services, which is making the API calls to the external API we have. And then we have our HTTP client, which we are using it to make the API call. And then we have the Redis service, which is also then doing the catch for us. So now let's run the application again and see if there is an error coming in or is build completed. So now you can see we have everything here. And the next thing that we need to do is we bring in the terminal right here. So anytime that we make an API call, we will check in the terminal to see if everything is, we are getting the logs as we want. So the first thing is that let's go and make an API calls to get all the posts. So let's see if there is no error. We make an API calls right here. So the first API calls go to the API or the endpoint and give us the data. So there is an error coming in that the Redis is not working, right? We have done everything, and this is the internal server error. So one thing is that you have to also make sure that the Redis is working in your local database, your local machine. So right now there is an error here. We are going to run in some command to make sure that some Docker command to make sure that our Redis is also working, right? So if you are working in an application where you have a Docker environment set up, you can then use that one, but I'm going to run it on localhost. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to do this. I'm going to say that Docker. So let's go and say Docker run. So we want to run this, and then we say that the name that we want to give, to this Redis is that we want to give it. So I want to use this. So the name is, I'm giving it some Redis, right? We can give it any name we want. We can say that .NET Redis or something like that. So make sure to run this command if you are running it on your local machine. So this one works for me, right? There is a lot of command that you can use. So Docker run name .NET. So this is the name we are giving to this Redis right here. And then the port we want to run it here, and Docker, we are fetching it from Docker IO, and then it's a library like that. So we hit enter like that. And then the header, we cannot find the specific. So let's first of all pull, let's do Docker pull, right? Because I'm not running Docker here on my machine. So make sure that you have Docker desktop also installed so that you can also run Docker. So I'm running the Docker engine, right? So now I have set up my Docker, and then it's running. So I'm setting the Docker desktop right here. So now I'm running my Docker desktop. Let's run it again. Unable to find this image in locally, right? So it's now pulling it. So when I'm running my Docker, it's now pulling it right from Docker. So we have to make sure that we are running a certain Redis instance with the port that we indicate. So this, let's take this thing again. The first thing is that when we check the service, right? When we check the service with our Redis service, when we check the Redis service, we are saying that we are telling Redis is that connect to a local host with this port. We have some Redis instance running in there. So we have to make sure that in our local host, we have certain Redis instance running in this. So that is it. So here we are trying to configure this. And now if I do Docker PS, you see, this is running. And 33 seconds ago, and it's running in the port that we wanted. So we can see the port says 379, which we have, we already configured it here, says 379. So now this local, Redis will connect to that port and make sure that we have certain Redis instance running our local machine so that it can connect to it and then it can use it. So this is very beautiful. If you want to do this, you can, it's very easy to set up. The first thing is that make sure to run that command and make sure to have Docker desktop installed. If you are on Windows, Linux and everything, make sure you have Docker on your machine. So let's go ahead and run it because now we have Docker, we have the Redis instance running right now, so we should expect some good news. So let's see if the application is running. So let's go ahead and close everything. We want to close this. We want to go back and run the application. Let's run the .NET application again and see the server is listening to port. So let's check if everything is working. So now you can see, now we have our application running in this port. So let's go back to Scalar right here, and let's see if you want to fetch a post. Now you can see it takes us 838 milliseconds, because what happened in Redis, with this API is that first, what happened is that it's normally fetch the API direct from the source for the first time and it catch it, right? So let's go to our terminal and check the logs. So you can see that the post is caught successfully, right? The post is caught. So this is a log that we configured in our service. So let's make a second API call. And now you can see it take only 34 milliseconds. It taking 34 milliseconds. The first one was 838 milliseconds. Now it taking only 34 milliseconds. Let's make API 15 milliseconds. So 29 milliseconds. So this is coming from here, and then you can see that post retrieve from cache. You can see post retrieve from cache. It's not that the data is being cut and now it can retrieve. So anytime we hit post, it then retrieve it from cache. Let's do the other ones. So let's go. We are done with post. Let's go with comment. So let's make a request to comment. And then the first one taking 650 milliseconds to get the data from the API. And you see how the thing is. So it's taking 650 milliseconds for us to get the data into our local machine. But what happened is that when we check our console right here, what is happening is that comment is also catch successfully, because in our method, that is one thing we indicated. So comment is catch successfully. Okay, so let's go ahead and do something like this. When you hit, now it's taking 30 milliseconds from 600 and 30 milliseconds to now 30 milliseconds. So we get 18 milliseconds. And when we check our console right here, you can see comment retrieve from the cache. So the first request is coming from the API. The rest of them is coming from the cache. So now any request that we are trying to make is coming from the cache. It's coming from the cache. It's coming from the cache. So which is beautiful. So now it means that our cache is working. Okay. So now we are also done with comment. Let's go to albums and check all the endpoints, if everything. So the first, when we make a request to album, we get 539 milliseconds for album to come in our local machine, which is not something we want. It's not best practice. So when we make API request, it taking 50 milliseconds. Our second request taking only 50 milliseconds. Why? Because we have already cached the data, and you can see album retrieve from the cache, right? And this is something we did in the service because the code is running fast, right? So album retrieved from the cache. And so this is the beauty of Redis. So you can use Redis to do this cache services where you can then get data easy instead of the user always to make a request to your API or make a request to a certain server for you to maybe for a cost to be increased. You can do it like this. So this is how we implement cache, or we work with cache in ASP.NET Core. So thank you for watching. You can, this code is going to be available in GitHub, so check the description and then get access to this code. You can use this one as a reference, especially the service which has some kind of best practice and easy way to use. You can use this in your production code. So thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel for more content related to Azure and .NET. So I'll see you in the next video. If you have any question, you can drop that one in the chat and then I'll respond to that. Thank you for watching, and then I'll see you in the next video.